Algebra 1, lesson 103, more on rational equations. Now just remember, when we say rational equations, we're talking about equations that are fractional or have denominators in them. Now, we're not learning any new rules, we're just learning how to use our rules more effectively, or the old rules that we already know. So we're going to go straight into the examples. The first one being 5 over t minus 2 over t minus 3 equals 0. Now, we have to be careful. Well, if you remember, the first thing we do is we try to find the least common multiple in the equation. So we look at all the denominators, we find the least common multiple. Some of you will be tempted to say, oh, the least common multiple is t minus 3. That would be incorrect. The reason why is because this denominator has a minus sign in it. So that makes it a polynomial. Whenever you have a polynomial in your numerator or your denominator, you need to mentally insert a set of parentheses. So that way you can think of it as one single idea, the single idea being numerator or denominator. So this is an entirely different number from this number. That means that the least common multiple is going to be t parentheses t minus 3. Now, the way we get rid of all these denominators is we multiply every single term in the equation by t parentheses t minus 3. So I'm going to do that with 5, negative 2. Don't forget, oh, also another thing, if there's a minus sign, don't forget that minus gets applied to that number. And then we also multiply it by 0. So we can't forget about that right side of our equation. I'll scribble this out since we don't need it anymore. But so every single piece of our equation gets multiplied by this least common multiple. Or if you could think of it, or if you want to think of it as left and right side of the equation, the left side would be multiplying both through distributive property. Now when we multiply these, what happens is the denominators will be canceled. In this case, the t and the t get canceled, and the t minus 3 and the t minus 3 get canceled. So to finish simplifying, all we'd have to do is distribute this 5. That gives me 5t minus 15, and then t times negative 2 would be negative 2t. And then 0 times all of that is still going to equal 0. Next, I will go ahead and combine like terms. 5 minus 2t is going to give me 3t minus 15 equals 0. From there, I use PEMDAS backwards to segregate the t. So I add 15 to each side. I get 3t equals 15, and then that looks a lot like a 6. Equals 15, and then last step I'm going to divide by 3 for an answer of 5. So t equals 5. All right, well, so again, the step here, or the new thing that we're learning, is watch out for these numerators and denominators that have plus or minus signs in them, meaning that they're polynomials. They need to be treated like their own number, and you cannot just use t minus 3 as your least common multiple, because it doesn't work. There's actually no mathematical way to turn t into t minus 3 through multiplication, so that's why it doesn't work. We'll do, let me see here, I'll try to find a really tough example. Here we go. No, that's not tough at all. You know, all the other examples look just like that. Here we go, got it. Last example I'll do is t minus 2 over t equals 14 over 3t minus 1/3. Okay, so again, we got to find the least common multiple of all the denominators. Great thing about these denominators, none of them have a plus or minus sign within the denominator, so we don't have any polynomials to deal with, which means my least common multiple is going to equal 3t. So then I take each side of the equation and I multiply it by 3t. This time I'm using the distributive property method instead of just writing it next to each of them. So here it multiplies like that. So then you have 3t times that, and then 3t times that. Now when we multiply by 3t, here the t's cancel, giving us a 3 that distributes to give us 3t minus 6. Over here, the 3t cancels, and then we just have 14. And then here, the 3 cancels. So negative 1 times t is just minus t. All right, so that's our new equation once we multiplied by the least common multiple. And this is pretty solvable. This isn't too difficult. So we'll go ahead and start by moving all the t's to one side while simultaneously moving all the whole numbers to the other. So I do the opposite action of minus t by adding, opposite action of negative 6 by adding. 3t plus t gives me 4t, and then 14 plus 6 gives me 20. Last step, I'm going to divide by 4 to give me an answer of 5. So t equals 5 as well. So that's it for the examples. If you guys have any questions, let me know on Moodle, and I will see you in class.